If you like the Which Money podcast, you'll love our Christmas offer of 25% off a Which Money annual subscription. If you buy before the 8th of January 2025, you can get a whole year of our expert money guidance for just £36.75, down from £49, which works out at just over 10 pence a day. To buy this Which Money subscription for yourself or anyone else who'd find our money guidance helpful, go to which.co.uk/moneygift. That's which.co.uk/moneygift to get 25% off a Which Money annual subscription.
When life gives you questions, Which? Get answers.
Welcome to the Which Money podcast, your weekly hit of money news and personal finance hacks to help make you better off. I'm Lucia Ariano, and here's what's coming up this week.
I see such a variety of victims in my work. I help a huge variety of victims, and many of them, very intelligent, educated, sensible people. I've helped people that have worked in financial services themselves, people that are university lecturers, and really there's no shame involved. There's a scam for everybody, and anybody could be a victim.
Between October 2023 and September 2024, they actually received over 10,000 reports relating to ticket fraud, and I think that was like 9.7 million losses. So I think because of those two big events, the Oasis tour and the Taylor Swift tour, we saw a massive increase this year.
This week, we're talking about the most prevalent crime in England and Wales, and that's fraud. Now, in the first quarter of this year, fraud and scam complaints hit their highest level on record. So what are the biggest scams we've seen in 2024, and what can you do to beat the scammers? Well, joining us to take us through all of this, we've got two of our fraud specialists here at Which. Tali Ramsey, hello.
Hi.
And Faye Lipson, welcome back.
Hiya.
So good to have you both on the show. Well, the stats I mentioned in the intro are pretty stark, aren't they? If anything, scams are becoming more prevalent, aren't they?
Yeah, so the stat that you did mention in the intro was actually from the Financial Ombudsman Service, which is where consumers go to escalate their financial complaints with companies. And they did record their highest record ever for fraud and scam complaints, especially compared to the same period last year. So it is increasing. They also noted that multi-stage frauds are one of the big reasons why we are seeing an increase. So that's when there's multiple companies involved.
Well, I think we have to outline what we come back to again and again. And it's really worth saying that you shouldn't feel ashamed if you get scammed or indeed come anywhere close to falling for something. I actually had a call from one of my best friends. It was a few months ago now, just saying that, her mum had just fallen victim to a scam. What should they do? I mean, Faye, you're an expert. Have you ever been close to falling victim before?
Yeah, interestingly enough, over the summer, I sort of did fall victim to a scam, but I went in slightly with my eyes open, so I was okay. But what happened was, I saw a clothing company advertising on Facebook, and I wanted to buy like a bikini, so I did. But I wasn't sure about this company. It looked fairly legitimate, but it was very new. There wasn't a lot of info about it, so I did take some precautions. I screenshotted the page that I was buying from. I paid via PayPal, and I just checked things like when the website was set up and things like that, just so that I kind of went in with my eyes open. And then when the swimsuit did arrive, but it was like terrible quality. Like it looked like it had been cut out with a pair of scissors. Basically, it was a joke. It was just very, very poor. So it was a bit of a scam, but because I'd kind of taken lots of evidence and prepared myself for that eventuality, I was very easily able to get my money back via PayPal's buyer protection scheme. So yeah, I think my wider message is absolutely anybody can fall victim to a scam, and I include myself in that. But there are precautions you should take to make sure that you're prepared in that eventuality, like paying with kind of protected methods and keeping evidence if you're not sure, and trying to stick to well-known retailers where possible. And one last thing I would just add is that I see such a variety of victims, in my work. I help a huge variety of victims, and many of them, very intelligent, educated, sensible people. I've helped people that have worked in financial services themselves, people that are university lecturers, and really, there's no shame involved. There's a scam for everybody, and anybody could be a victim.
Shall we get into some of the biggest scams of 2024? Now, Tali, you wrote a great piece in the latest Witch magazine that rounded them all up. Can we start with deep fake videos? These are quite scary, aren't they? What are they and what are they used for?
Yeah, so deep fake videos are basically just fake videos that show people, usually like well-known celebrities, saying things that they never said. And I think we're seeing an increase because deepfake tools are becoming more accessible. So when we think about AI, artificial intelligence, we've got tools like ChatGPT, and that exploded and, it became really accessible for people. There's similar tools to create deepfakes as well. So scammers are utilizing them for their scams. So I think that's why we're seeing so many recently.
And AI videos, they're harder to spot than others, aren't they? We have a quiz on the Witch website, which I did this week. And, I'm quite embarrassed to say it caught me out and I got 60%. But honestly, I was completely guessing. What I did find interesting was what Witch gave back to you afterwards. It mentioned that blinking, for example, is something that might make it easier to spot. Though, honestly, I hadn't noticed that the fake wasn't blinking as much as usual. I mean, even now I'm looking at you and looking at myself thinking, am I blinking very much? It's difficult. It's so difficult to know. I mean, have either of you done the quiz? How did you find it?
Yeah, so I didn't create this quiz actually. And I also got 60%. I think some of them were obvious, but some of them were really, really difficult to spot. And I feel like the signs that we typically use to spot deepfakes, scammers are becoming aware of, and then they're making better deepfakes to make them more convincing. So yeah, I did find it quite difficult as well.
I mean, what are some of the big signs? I mean, it's interesting that you said you found some of them quite obvious to spot, but I didn't personally find them obvious. What are some of the signs we should be looking out for?
I think so. Lip syncing is a sign because some deepfakes use lip syncing. So if their words aren't matching up with the movements of their mouth, that can be one. And then just looking at the details in the quality. So things like hair, lighting, skin tone, any kind of blurring in the video can also be a sign. Also, any kind of like weird background noises, or if the voice of the celebrity, like the fake celebrity, is a little bit robotic, that can also be a sign. But I think with deepfake videos, a good way to kind of spot them is like where you saw them in the first place. So if you see it from a random account and it's pretending to be Elon Musk, it probably isn't him.
Well, let's move on to something else then. Fraudsters using fake social media accounts to scam us. Faye, what's happening here?
So there's so many different types of scam. As you say, it's so important just to have an attitude of healthy skepticism most of the time. So one of the things we see quite a lot are these sort of copycat brand pages that are pretending to be really big retailers, like, respected icons of the high street. So you'll see kind of ridiculous, kind of unrealistic deals and competitions offered from these bogus pages. And if you actually go and look at the page info, you'll see that, whereas the company's existed for over 100 years, this page has been set up a few days ago, for example. So that's one thing to look out for. Other types of scam that we see are account takeovers, where a family member or a friend will get their account kind of hacked and taken over by a scammer, and then the scammer will kind of message all of that person's friends and connections with some sob story that they're in a bad situation and they need you to send them some funds. And sadly, because people are kind and want to help out a friend, some people will send them money. And so that's another one to watch out for. And lastly, another one we see quite a lot are ticket scams. They're absolutely everywhere. People posting on community pages and stuff advertising Taylor Swift tickets or obviously Oasis now that they just simply don't have. So yeah, there's so many things to be wary of.
I feel like scammers they really do try and target us when we're vulnerable. You know, we've got a problem, we want it dealt with quickly, potentially, and we just might not be thinking rationally.
Absolutely. So fraudsters definitely don't want us thinking rationally. They definitely don't want us to kind of use our higher order, part of our brains. So they either seek out situations where people are already excited or in panic or feeling some strong emotion, or they create that emotion themselves. And they do that so that your brain will bypass, its rational thinking and act on an emotional impulse. And they're experts at doing that, and and they've got a different story or prompt for any situation, and that's why we say that anybody could fall victim to a scam.
But going back to social media for a moment, it can be still very useful to resolve complaints, for example. Faye, what would you like to talk about here?
So this is quite a complex area. So we do see sometimes that people kind of, for example, tweeting companies or brands on X with a really bad story, a complaint essentially, can be really effective. There can be an element of, naming and shaming, public pressure, and companies can really sort of buckle under that and put things right very quickly. However, you do need to be really careful with things like this, because if you kind of go public like that with a complaint on social media, then not only does that kind of reveal quite a lot about you, like who, for example, who you bank with or who your insurer is, or for example, that could be used by a scammer or an identity thief later on, but also it does leave you open to like approaches from basically copycat pages and profiles where somebody sort of slides in and responds to you, and you think it's the company that you've just tweeted or tagged or whatever, but it's actually an imposter that's set up like a fake copycat site. So that's something to be really careful of, and we see it an awful lot. We even once saw Action Fraud, the fraud reporting helpline, being impersonated in this way. It's just staggering the depths that scammers will go to. So for that reason, we always say kind of go to the website of the company and find out what the official channel is for complaint, and follow that channel as far as you possibly can. And I would say that the situations where social media would be appropriate would be where it's really serious and urgent. So, for example, there was a case very recently, not a scam case, but a case where somebody's mother was very critically ill with a brain injury overseas, and her health insurance company, her travel insurance company, was trying to repatriate her to the UK against medical advice. It was very, very urgent, and they kind of tweeted, lots of journalists, got the UK press involved, and then the travel insurance company backed down. That's an example of a really urgent case where social media might provide like a level of pressure. But I would say in most cases, it's going to be more appropriate to follow whatever the official channel is and try and keep your kind of details and financial life kind of as private as possible.
That's a very good tip there. Well, after a quick break, we'll be looking at some more of the biggest scams of 2024, going deeper into scam ticket sales and giving you more advice on how to stop yourself from falling victim yourself and what to do in any case when you are scammed. We'll be back after this.
Hi, I'm Andy Webb.
And I'm Amelia Murray. We're the hosts of Cash Chats, the award-winning podcast from BeCleverWithYourCash.com.
Now, if you're enjoying listening to the Which Money podcast, then we know you'll love Cash Chats too, your go-to podcast to help you make the most of your money.
Each week we share our top tips, secret hacks and the latest deals so you can master your finances and keep more money in your pocket.
We're the only podcast that covers every single bank switching deal to help you make hundreds of pounds each year. Some of our listeners have made thousands.
We'll also tell you where to get the best savings rates, how to beat TV streaming hikes, whether you should overpay on your mortgage, and much more.
And if you want to know where to buy a cheap bottle of Baileys, bargain theatre tickets, or get the latest credit card welcome bonus, you'll be sure to find something in our deals of the week.
New episodes are out every Tuesday and Friday mornings on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all podcast apps. And you'll find us on YouTube too.
Just search Cash Chats Podcast and hit follow.
welcome back to the show. Now, it's been a big year for events. As we already mentioned, Taylor Swift's arena tour, Oasis reunited, and they had a big tour go on sale too. But the scammers, as we have talked about, have been out in force, trying to flog non-existent tickets. Now, we've had some members get in touch with us about this. Faye, you have some anecdotes, don't you?
That's right. So we've typically hear from people that have seen these on social media. And in one case, I spoke to somebody that went quite far down the route of almost buying these, but thankfully kind of smelt a rat just in time. And what they said was that they were initially promised that they could buy through a resale site. The scammer said that they were on the resale site and they would sell through the site, but then sort of right at the last minute, said that they were having difficulty figuring out how to do that or something, and could you just send me a bank transfer? So sometimes it looks like it might be legitimate, and then there'll be this kind of switch and bait kind of right at the end, and that can be kind of one of the signs. So that's something really to look out for. Just because it kind of initially looks promising doesn't mean it is, and you really must kind of buy through a legitimate site, and just be really careful when you're on social media, because Facebook in particular is absolutely, I'm sorry to say, deluged with these at the moment. I myself am an admin of a local, like a community page, and we get these almost every day. First it was Taylor Swift, and then obviously those dates have now passed, and now it's Oasis. We've actually had to create filters on the page to like automatically decline posts that mention Taylor Swift or tickets or Oasis, just to try and like stem the tide, because it really is a daily occurrence. So just be incredibly like mindful and wary whenever you're using social media. If you see something like this being advertised, there's a really good chance it's a scam.
And Tali, you've done a lot of work on scams for Which, and especially ticket scams. And I feel like often it becomes rife when shows sell out quickly. Could you tell us a bit more about what you found here?
Yeah, so I think scammers thrive when there's a scarcity of something. So we definitely do see, like Faye was saying, them pop up everywhere when there are sellout events. But I did find some data from Action Fraud between October 2023 and September 2024. They actually received over 10,000 reports relating to ticket fraud. And I think that was like 9.7 million losses. So I think because of those two big events, the Oasis tour and the Taylor Swift tour, we saw a massive, massive increase this year.
Wow, that really just puts it into some perspective, doesn't it? And, a theme we keep coming back to in today's show is just how up to date these scammers are, how modern that they might be. And one really quite mad example to me is QR scams, which, are those black and white boxes that you scan with your phone camera, and it takes you to a website. And there's no surprise here, is there? Scammers are using these as well.
Yeah. So the thing about QR codes is obviously they lead to websites. But when you see the QR code, you can't necessarily see where it goes. So they're perfect for scammers to disguise their dodgy websites. So we've definitely seen cases where scammers have put out dodgy QR codes that lead to their malicious websites, and also tamper with existing QR codes by putting a sticker on top. And what happens is you either go to one of these websites and you have to enter in your details because they're impersonating a legitimate company. So in that case, you might enter financial details and be scammed that way, or you might give away your data and then be scammed at a later date. Or they download malicious software onto your device, which can result in you being scammed instantly or at a later date as well.
From your experience, what happens when you scam them? Are you taken to a website that looks like the one you're going to?
Yeah, so I suppose the kind of classic example that I'm thinking of is you're trying to pay for parking at a parking meter, and some scammers come along and kind of stuck a fake not a fake, a real QR code, but not leading to the genuine parking payment site. So that's quite a common one. And you'll scan and you'll kind of think that you are going through to a genuine payment portal. They'll take your personal and payment details, as Tali says. And then what very often happens is you end up kind of like roped into like a scam subscription. So you're getting money deducted every month and you've no idea how or where that came from, and it can take some real untangling with your bank to figure out what on earth that was and how it started. So I think it's not even always clear to people how the scam began or how they became like enrolled in these recurring payments, and that's what's so sneaky and clever about it.
Tali, what would you add here? How can you avoid falling for scams in the first place?
I think with QR codes, it is difficult. So I definitely think it's important to inspect just with your eyes a QR code and seeing if it does look like a sticker's been stuck over something. And then I think you can also hover over you can preview the website before actually going on it. When you have your camera and you put it over the QR code, usually the link can pop up. So if it seems like a bit strange, the web address, and maybe avoid it.
And can we just touch on one final scam for the moment? And, I think this feels like a bit of an old school one, like when you'd get an unsolicited call or text. But now scammers are using WhatsApp to target us. Tali, can you tell us more?
Yeah, so this year we continue to see loads of scams happening on WhatsApp. Scammers use WhatsApp to target people by impersonating their adult children or job recruiters. We also have seen a lot of financial scams start this way by posing as investors, also fake giveaways, impersonating legitimate companies.
And can you talk a little bit more about what these messages might look like? Are they using pressure tactics or panic tactics to scare us?
So I think sometimes they just pique people's curiosity. So we've seen a lot this year where the message will just say, "Hi, I haven't spoke to you in ages. How are you doing?" Or, "Hi, Sarah, I have your flower order." Or just random things it's called like a wrong number scam. So then they'll go on to say, "Oh, you've got the wrong number," for example, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then it will turn into like a conversation. So their aim is just to keep you talking for as long as possible. And then it will turn into some kind of financial scam or something that we usually see with like romance scammers where they try and get you to invest in a financial scheme. So that's happened a lot over WhatsApp as well. And then, of course, there are the really kind of scary pressure tactics when they're impersonating adult children, the hi mum scam, for example, and saying that they're in a really awful situation and they need money transferring immediately. So we also see those scare tactics happen over WhatsApp.
And I've also heard of this idea of having a family password in situations like this. How do these work?
Yes, so I think this is really to guard against the hi mum and dad type scams that Tali's been talking about. Because it can be quite hard to tell if you get a text from a new number and you've got adult children and the text is claiming, "Hi mum, I smashed my phone. This is my new number." That could possibly be legitimate. You just don't know. It can be helpful to kind of agree with your family, like a password, so that you can identify each other. And then you can just, if somebody's claiming to be one of your children, you can just ask them, what's the family password? And they won't know. But you can also just try phoning their original number, and obviously if they pick up, straight away that nothing's gone wrong with their phone. So yeah, there's lots of ways to rumble this type of scam, but it just have to occur to you in the first place that it might be fake, and that's what's really tricky, actually, because I think a lot of people would just be sort of moved by concern for their child and wouldn't necessarily have that skeptical thought in the first place. So yeah, it's really just having that skepticism, that healthy skepticism to anything unexpected that comes through from a number that you haven't dealt with before, as Tali says.
Healthy skepticism. I mean, I have that in bounds. And actually, Tali, when you were talking earlier about an example of, hello, I've got your flower delivery. I had a text message recently saying I had a flower delivery coming with a link to click on to say that I was definitely going to be there. And I just automatically assumed it was a scam. It actually turned out to be legitimate. I did still get the flowers, thankfully. But, a healthy amount of skepticism is fine, isn't it? And I suppose that brings us then to the end of the show and any kind of advice you'd like to leave us with, because we really have covered such a lot of ground and such a variety of scams. So what kind of nuggets of advice would you like to leave our listeners with today?
I would just say any request for your personal details or financial or payment details, verify it. Always verify it. Make sure that you are dealing with who you think you are dealing with. Contact the company via, a trusted means that you've used before. Not via a phone number, for example, that you're being messaged by the potentially spurious contact, but using a trusted method that you've used before, just to check that what you're being told is true. And it might be a bit of a faff, it might take a bit of extra time, but a legitimate caller will never mind you doing this, whereas a scam caller will get worked up about you doing this, try and keep you talking, and that in itself is a big red flag. So it's always worth your time to stop the contact, pause, take 5 minutes and figure out how to verify what you've just been told, and do that.
Sterling advice, Faye. And then Tali, what would you add?
Yeah, I agree that it is about taking time. I think that's the key message here. I think never clicking links in unsolicited messages is also a good one, because that is the key way that scammers lead you to phishing websites. And a lot of times an official message from your bank, for example, will tell you the information and then tell you to log on to your online account separately and guide you through that process. They usually won't leave a link. Another thing is on social media, any kind of posts or adverts that come from accounts that are like newly created or don't have a lot of content on them or aren't the official business or company account probably should just be ignored. Because typically if a company does want to make a post, it's going to be from their official account. So I think they can be ignored. And then the last thing I would say is when it comes to scam websites, I would just be wary if they're newly created. So you can go on a domain checker like who.is, and you can see when the website was registered. And if it was registered recently, it usually can be a sign that it may be a scam website. So that's another good way to double check.
So much good advice there, and as there has been in the full episode. And just before we wrap up, I should say that you can listen to more podcast episodes about the scams we've seen this year over on our Get Answers podcast, and I'll put a link to those in the show description of today. And there you'll also find a link to Tali's piece, as well as a link to sign up to our free weekly Scam Alerts newsletter. Thank you both again for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, a huge thank you to Tali and Faye for coming on the show today, and to you for listening to this week's episode of the Which Money podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please do hit subscribe to make sure you catch our new episodes as soon as they drop. For daily money news and advice, you can find us on social media at Which Money and online at which.co.uk/money. And we also have a free money newsletter, which is delivered to your inbox every Monday. To sign up, visit which.co.uk/money newsletter. This episode of the Which Money podcast was presented by me, Lucia Ariano, and produced and edited by James Rowe.
Life can get hectic when you start a family, but Which can help you make confident decisions, from improving your home to financial planning. We'll make sure you're prepared. Whether you're looking to reduce your household bills, seeking advice around your child's health, or want to find our best buys for your new home, Which has got you covered. Use our expert advice to make the right choices for you and your growing family by visiting which.co.uk/growing family. That's where you'll find everything you need to make confident decisions and have peace of mind that all the advice you're getting is 100% independent. So to find out more, just head to which.co.uk/growing family.